So obviously I'm going to be talking about the pressure in which the fall of Afghanistan to the Taliban is going to kind of put on the ongoing border crisis, which is clearly going to get worse. So you may be able to remember back in 2015, there was, of course, the problem of ISIS. It's very difficult to forget. And here is a question from the EU, which is very useful, actually. So they're saying, ISIS terrorists have been using the migration crisis to send terrorists to Europe on migrant boats. A number of cases have been reported, including that of Abdul Majid Touil, I'm butchering their names, but I don't care, the terrorists, who was responsible for the Bardo Museum attack in Tunisia of the 18th of March 2015, who killed 21 tourists. He was spotted on a migrant boat in Sicily on February 2015 and later arrested in Milan. Another such case is that of Medhi Ben Nasir, who was arrested in Italy in 2008 for being the head of a terrorist cell with links to Al-Qaeda. He was then sentenced to 7 years in prison and then extradited to his country of origin, Tunisia. In October 2015, he returned on a European migrant boat, claimed to be an asylum seeker. In the latest Paris attack of 13th of November, a Syrian passport was found near the body of one of the attackers.
So this is the European Parliament giving us examples of ISIS keeping their claims of sending terrorists with the migrants.
Absolutely. So who better to hear it from as well? The EU, where, you know, they're very big on getting lots of people to accept so-called refugees and asylum seekers. And they're the ones saying this, or someone was asking a question about it in the EU Parliament on the 26th of November 2015. So, of course, you touched on the news in the previous segment about Afghan asylum seekers being able to flee to Britain without even needing a passport. From what I've managed to gather, this was for the supposed interpreters and the contractors and people who worked with the military and our operations there. But it doesn't really elaborate on whether it is other people. And you suggested that it is going to be, and I wasn't actually able to find anything concrete. So I think
the
it's
numbers
still
just don't add up. It's just
well, yeah, like
how
the
are we
numbers of
accepting
people
hundreds of thousands when there aren't hundreds of thousands of people.
Well, I wasn't actually able to find anything from Downing Street to suggest we're going to accept them, but I did find stuff from the Labour Party, which I'll get onto later, of senior figures suggesting we should take far more. So, where's it gone? So, the Labour Party, of course, the shadow Foreign Office Minister Stephen Kinnock warned that the intake needs bold and ambitious and generous offers. So supposedly just the 2,000 or was it 4,000 roughly interpreters and contractors that we were going to let in originally wasn't enough. So he was asked, well, what about 20,000 people? Would that be about right? He said,
Why?
We need to see an offer that is also backed up with the capacity to process it. So he's suggesting, okay, we need some kind of figure.
What is wrong with these people? Like, we have several thousand interpreters, yeah, we'll make it 20,000. Why? Why not a million if you're just throwing numbers out of your ass? I mean, what's wrong with him where he's just like, yeah, just loads of migrants? Why? Well, F Britain, that's why.
Why don't we just empty Afghanistan and then they'll have no people to govern and then the problem will be solved? Why did they not think of that? I mean,
I can't stand the Labour Party, the way they think.
Yeah, so in a conversation with a journalist, he says, as you pointed out, the situation on the ground there is so difficult at the moment that we've got to ensure that we don't open up an offer that we can't actually deliver on. So we need to see in detail the plan from the government, but it's absolutely right that we make an ambitious and bold offer. Then the Mail article goes on to say, asked if this means tens of thousands of people rather than a few thousand, he said, I would have thought so, yes. Yes, we do, of course, need to see the detail, but I think this needs to be a significant offer. So he's suggesting in the realm of tens of thousands, right?
We're not even.
He obviously is trying to wriggle out of it because it looks bad, and he understands that, but
that's bastard though. Like you could put it down to the guys who work with us, and then they're not terrorists or unlikely to be terrorists. So he's like, no, make it 20,000. Okay, then we're going to get a bunch of Taliban with them.
It seems entirely obvious, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And he says women and girls would also be expected to get special priority because the Taliban aren't exactly quite as enlightened as us in the West on that sort of thing. So may also be worth remembering the Manchester Arena bomber, Salman Abedi. So he was born in Manchester. So the point of me including this here is that you don't even need to worry about the first generation. Sometimes second generation.
It was even worse.
Yeah, well, this is what happened here. He was born in Manchester to Libyan-born refugees who escaped Gaddafi's regime, and he lived here for 22 years. And as this Independent article shows, he was actually on holiday in Libya when Islamist violence erupted, and the Navy came and rescued him along with other British tourists. So he and his family clearly owed a lot to the British state or the British people, right? And then he went on to carry out the Manchester Arena bombing. So
yeah, second generation can be much worse as well, because that's the generation that has the identity crisis mostly about, where am I really from? Am I British? Am I not? And it can lead to being
so
radicalised.
it's not even the risk of just the Taliban, it's the fact that the people who settle here, who have every right to owe us, for their safety.
Yeah, there's a
and
level
then
of risk there. Why make it way worse?
Yeah, and tens of thousands, 20,000, it's way, way too much. Like, the interpreters at a push. I mean, there is a good argument for that, in that they've helped work with us. They've put their own lives in danger. They've proved to us that they deserve something in return, and I think that would be fair. But just random people, it is such an unnecessary risk.
They can all go to Pakistan. Pakistan is mostly responsible for the Taliban, therefore they can take the fruits of their labour and take those refugees and take them. But the other thing on my mind is that there's also an argument for the interpreters, which is could you not just resettle them around the Middle East instead of moving them into the West? Which is not
I know
a bad
there
argument.
are plenty of other countries that are actually favourable to the West. Like, you could move the interpreters to Saudi Arabia. They're our ally, aren't they?
Yeah, we'll give them loads of
Egypt.
cash, and therefore it's not a burden for the Saudis or something, rather than moving them to the UK.
Yeah, and they'd probably be happier there as well, wouldn't they? Because it's closer to their cultural heritage than the UK, although that's increasingly becoming irrelevant.
Depends on.
So, on something a bit more positive, did you know that there is a push to make Lithuania great again? And Lithuania is building a wall, and Belarus is going to pay for it.
Based.
Well, Belarus isn't actually going to pay for it, but they're following along those lines. So 6 days ago, Lithuania announced that they're just going to build a massive wall to keep out all of the migrants that they are saying Belarus is sending to them. So supposedly more than 4,000 migrants have entered the country of Lithuania illegally from Belarus this year. And of course, Belarus, Lithuania tend not to get along very well, because of course Lithuania accused Belarus of flying in migrants who would head to the border. So it's not even like they got there organically, it's that the Belarusian authorities are flying in migrants to kind of send to Lithuania as some kind of weapon. And of course, recently in the news as well, they had the case of the flight to Lithuania being diverted in Belarusian airspace to Russia, and they had a bit of a falling out with that. So they're not on the best terms, and therefore they are building a giant wall. So, where's it gone? So yeah, the actual flight, the Ryanair flight, was diverted to Minsk. So obviously the relationship between Belarus and Russia is relatively close, and Lithuania doesn't want anything to do with either of them, and it's very tense on the border. So since there was a surge in migrants, also Latvia, Poland kind of putting on pressure on the EU to stop them from doing so. So I'm just going to skip over that stuff. So the migrants have already reduced in number since the announcement of this giant wall. I think they're spending ridiculous amounts of money on it. Where's it gone? So they say the wall is going to be 13 foot tall, metal fence with razor wire, and it's expected to cost 152 million euros.
I'm hearing this in Trump's voice.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a beautiful wall. It's going to have razor wire. It's going to be 50 foot tall.
Yeah, so basically they've taken a leaf out of Trump's book, and they say, without a physical barrier, it is impossible to protect our borders. It is very clear, the Interior Minister said. The Lithuanian government has also announced a plan to just pay 300 euros to each person who turns up for them to go away.
It's literally the meme of, I'm going to pay you $100 to F off.
It really is, yeah. So, yeah.
I mean, that won't work, because then they'll just turn up tomorrow and be like, 300 more euros, please. which, yeah.
But yeah, the numbers have actually dropped since they made this announcement about a week ago. So yesterday, the numbers have reportedly dropped, according to info. I think it's infomigrants.net. And something else that I just thought I would throw in about what Lithuania has been up to, because they've been following in Trump's footsteps yet again, in that they've been annoying China. And this is also great. So China has demanded that Lithuania withdraw its ambassador to Beijing after they acknowledged the Taiwanese government, and they've allowed them to have an embassy in Lithuania, making it the first European country to do so. Of course, China considers the democratically ruled Taiwan an affront to their entire regime, and they view it as part of their territory that is being occupied, as most people are aware. However, the Chinese government has expressed its categorical opposition to this move, and they say that China has decided to recall its ambassadors to Lithuania and demanded the Lithuanian government recall its ambassador to China. So they've kind of had a formal falling out. And they say, we urge the Lithuanian side to immediately rectify its wrong decision, take a concrete measure to undo the damage, and to not move further down the wrong path. And to end this, I think it's worth looking at something that is entirely unrelated to the migrant thing, but related to your Afghanistan stuff, in that the Chinese state media, the Global Times, says, from what happened in Afghanistan, those in Taiwan should perceive that once a war breaks out in the Straits, the island's defences will collapse in hours and the US military won't come to help. As a result, the DPP will quickly surrender. And the picture that they've got underneath is, once a cross-Straits war breaks out while the mainland seizes the island with force, the US would have a much greater determination than it had for Afghanistan, Syria and Vietnam if it wants to interfere. Or it would require.
I love how they say once a war breaks out, not if a war breaks out.
Yeah, they're saying it's inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, this has always been Mao's position, so I suppose keeping in with the tradition there. But also, I love the Lithuanians there. I mean, just standing up to China, be like, no, get lost. We're not going to do it. And that's the sort of moves we were looking for, especially post-pandemic, where everyone needs to move away from China. We need to take everything we can away from them that we've been giving them for so many goddamn years.
I also find it unusual that Lithuania, EU member, right, and they're taking all these hard measures that we in Britain were told you can't do these sorts of things, you can't control your borders, remain a member of the EU, and then there they are, actually building a wall.
I just can't imagine like the border guards just literally just stood there like, I'm going to pay you $100
If you enjoyed this segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full broadcast live every weekday at 1 PM UK time on lotuseaters.com.